Yay! Today is Tuesday, February 6th, and we get to begin Greek mythology. This is my advanced class. If you're the regular class, you have a different video because it takes over different words, it'll just confuse you. But being confused might be good for you. Your next book report checkpoint is going to be tomorrow. For you guys, that's going to be a total of 14 squares. The narrative speech begins Monday. Let's see. The dance marathon movie is canceled. The dance is still a go, and you get a chance to shave my head and my beard if you bring extra money and you go to it. And then we have bell work. For those of you playing the home version, make sure that bell work into your notebook. Tomorrow is the last day to turn in the t-shirt money. If you are wanting to join us for the t-shirty stuff, we'd love to have you. So make sure you turn that stuff in. And then speech coming up on Monday, where you get to do your narrative speech. Where you're going to tell us a story about a fable, or your book report book, or some report choice you've made, like not being here at school. And then the directions are on there, so make sure you take a look at that. And on my website, there's a new page to download things called the Greek Mythology page. You click on that, there's a whole bunch of buttons. 2 of them are going to take you to the family tree and the list of important gods, which will make quizzes easier, the bell work easier, understanding things more easy, all that good stuff. Here is your bell work. One, you might want to focus in a little bit and try and help you out. Pause it once I get done explaining things. You're going to create 4 categories: gods, places, things, and other stuff, and you're going to put those 20 words into those 4 categories, figuring out where you think each one should go. Your categories are not going to be the same length. Some are going to have 3, some are going to have 12. You just put them wherever you want. And at the bottom, you're going to write a story using 10 of those words. If you use things incorrectly, that's absolutely fine. I don't expect you to know everything yet. That's why I'm going to do this whole teaching thing. Now, those of you at home, hit pause, but you do your bell work, and then come back, and I'll do more babbling and help you out. With Greek mythology, first off, yes, Greek mythology. Because usually the first thing kids goes, what? We're doing Greek mythology? To which I go, yes, we're doing Greek mythology. That's why I put it right up there. Because I'm used to the questions by now. It just makes things easier. Well, Mr. Brovicast, this isn't social studies. I'm aware of that too. The fact that some of you guys have learned this in the past in social studies. Go you! You have extra knowledge. Stop bragging. Other kids feel bad. The joy of English is I get to teach anything I want as long as it has words in it. Guess what? Everything has words in it, so there's a lot of stuff I get to choose from. And I chose Greek mythology because it connects to a lot of stuff. In all honesty, in all my years of teaching, there's 2 things kids come back and say that they use. One, magic lens. Unfortunately, it's just because it gets used for everything because words and stuff like that. The other one is Greek mythology. This is the one that's going to be used by the most of you as you go into high school and college. It pops up in movies and TV shows and all the different references that are going to be out there. So I do it because it connects. If you did it in social studies, yay you. You're also going to do it in English. The posters will stay up. You'll see them all around the room. Those of you who are at home, you can't see the posters, but they're all over the place. I do not take them down when it comes time for quizzes. I do not take them down when it comes time for a test. I reference them as I tell the stories. I'll point to them with my little lasery device, and I'll tell the stories. The idea being, when it's time for you to take a quiz, look at the poster. Maybe it'll jog your thinking, and it's going to end up helping you out. So they'll be up there. The only drawback is if you're absent. If you're absent, I send you to the hallway to go take your quiz. And in that case, you're not going to get a chance to see the posters. And if you move seats so that I can see you and you're right in front of me and become a distraction, I put you in the hallway so that you no longer distract me, because it's really hard to keep talking when I'm worried about smacking a child. For those of you at home, that might not mean anything to you, but it means something to us. Did you just talk about smacking a kid? I did. Educationally. You will have questions as we move through this. That is fine. Especially if you've done anything with Greek mythology in the past, you're going to have a lot of questions, because my stories are going to be different from some of the stories you've seen in the past. Mr. Brovicast, your stories are wrong. They might be. But for the most part, it's because of that oral tradition thing. Same thing that happens to fables happened to Greek mythology. And what does oral tradition do to stories? That's just about the same thing. So when I get to a story about Pandora that you've heard before, my version's going to be different. They're both correct. There's just different versions out there. And so we'll get into all these different versions, all the different changes. The problem is, you're going to want to know a whole bunch of information here at the very beginning of the year, because you're going to be all excited about learning. I can't do that because I can't pack 150 hours of information into 40 minutes. I don't have those kind of godlike powers. I mean, I have godlike powers, just not those. So you're going to have to just wait. So whenever you ask a question, I'm almost always going to respond with, we'll get to that. But Mr. Brovicast, what about? We'll get to that. But I heard once that, we'll get to that. So eventually, we'll get to it. Just have patience. I'm not good at patience. I've learned. So when you raise your hand, don't take it personally when I ignore you. Especially because I've gotten pretty good at reading the, I'm excited, I have something I want to connect right now, and I'm just going to ignore you. It's not personal. I don't hate you. I may hate you, but it's not connected to why I'm ignoring you now. It just means that if I answer your question, it sends me off on a side story, and we're going to get distracted and not get to the actual things I have to get to, so you just have to hold on to that thought. So just keep that in mind. Mythology, by definition, means it was a religion. That's what the word mythology means. It works out really well that we're doing this right now, and you guys have all the speakers coming in for social studies talking about things, because if we were doing this 2,000 years ago, you'd have a speaker coming in talking about Greek mythology. That's a lie. Because back then, this was not a religion. It was the only religion. It was either you believed in these or you were dead. Not because they killed you, but it's because those were the only options. You were either alive and believed it or dead and didn't worry about it. Because it wasn't like you could choose different things. This predates all the Abrahamic religions, the Judaism, Christianity, Catholicism, Muslim, all of that. It predates all of this. It was just, this is what you believed in. Do people still believe in it today? Absolutely not. Anyone that believes in this today and worships these gods today wears a really tight white jacket and lives in a very padded room. So we're probably not going to have them as a guest speaker because they're on the scary side. So no one, this is the part where you get to learn I don't call on kids for a long time. It's like, I'm just airing yourself out. It's okay, sometimes you just got to stretch. And so that's why today this is not an actual religion. Then why are you teaching this if it's a dead religion? Because it shows up more in stuff today than anything else I'm going to teach you. It was a religion at one time, but is not now. Mr. Brovicast, is this stuff real? Yes and no. It depends on how you look at it. At the time, yes, they believed all of this was real. Just like if you're a Christian, you believe in Jesus and he was real. If you're a Buddhist, you don't, because it's a different religion. So to them, yes, they believed in all of these. Did the gods actually exist? Yes, to them. We're not Greek mythology, so to us, no. They're just stories. But what if I start to believe it? Then I'm going to introduce you to this padded room with a really nice jacket. It fits really well. This is also the time where kids lose the most beat points. The reason being is that kids get really excited to learn. And for some reason, a lot of kids are not used to learning and they end up yelling at me. Because you're like, Mr. Perfect, what about? I'm like, shh. Or you end up enjoying the stories because I like telling stories. And a lot of this is me telling stories. And kids get all worked up and you start talking. And then you interrupt and throw me off my whole flow trying to do this. And so because it's the first time that kids' learning neurons have been popping, it's going to throw you off. So this is where kids lose the most beat points. If you become distracting, I boot you out of my room. That's the bad news. The good news is you get to watch the videos. The bad news is you have to watch the videos because I can't have you distracting me because you're distracting. So I just remove you because it makes my life easier. Speaking of which, most of this unit is all me telling stories. There are very few you have to read. There will be a handful, but a lot of it is me telling stories out loud to you. That is both good and bad. It's good because it's a lot less work for you to do. All you have to do is sit here and pay attention and stare at me and have some of the words absorb in. It's bad because if you miss a day, I have no story to give you. You have to watch the video to understand what happened. It's also bad because when it comes time for a quiz, you have no story to look off of. You can't open up a book because it's all in your brain. And if you didn't do the pay attention bits, then you're out of luck. The good news is I will give you like a little notes thing to fill out as we go through. But I'm not a big one on notes, so there's not going to be a whole lot to it. It's basically just to spark your memory on some of the stuff that we go through. But a lot of it will just be the paying attention-y bits, which for most of you shouldn't be too hard because I try to make it interesting. But for those of you who have issues, you have issues. But if you're absent, watch the YouTube and just accept the fact that you're going to be confused. Now, before we get to this, a couple questions for you guys. Out of my own curiosity, how many of you have had a teacher teach Greek mythology in a class formal setting in the past at one point or another? Yay! All right, hands down. How many of you have read Greek mythology on your own, either Lightning Thief, Rick Riordan, any of the books along those lines? You're familiar with it? Yay! All right, hands down again. Last question. How many of you have done nothing with Greek mythology, either reading on your own or things like that? This is brand new. That's fine. Yay! It's all good. With how I teach it. I start like you know nothing and like you're a bunch of idiots. because that's how he treats you every day. But with Greek mythology, I found out that a lot of kids, the previous stuff you have does not necessarily connect to how I teach it. So we're going to start from the ground and work our way up. So if you know nothing, you're fine. If you know a whole bunch, you're probably fine because you'll have references. The drawbacks you'll have is where some of my stories don't match previous stories that you know. Also, if your knowledge comes from books and movies, we might have issues because a lot of the Lightning Thief books weren't completely based in Greek mythology. I'd like to say they weren't based in fact, but these are made-up stories, so they're not really fact in the first place. But they're not based on the accepted stories. They're creatively interpreted because that's what makes books more fun. Movies, even worse. As an example, a lot of kids, their first introduction to Greek mythology is the Disney movie Hercules. How many of you have seen the Disney movie Hercules? Yay! All right, here's the problem with that. Almost everything in that movie is wrong. That movie is as close to Greek mythology as Kennedy's story is to Greek mythology. It's like you just took random words and just plugged them in there, and Disney went, make a movie! And they did it. Because here's the hint. In the Hercules cartoon, who's the bad guy trying to kill Hercules?
Hades.
Hades. Big guy, blue flamey hair, hates Hercules. In Greek mythology, they're friends. They hang out. They play poker on the weekends. They get along really well. They don't fight each other at all. But who tries to hurt Hercules? There is a bad guy who tries to hit Hercules the entire time. That's Hera. No, that's his mom. No, it's not. Hera tries to kill him as a baby because her husband got friendly with another girl and she got jealous and tries to kill. Hera loves killing babies. It's like her hobby that she does all the time. Apparently Disney was like, we can't make a movie about this lady killing babies. So they changed the story quite a bit. Now he does go out and do a bunch of labors. That part was kind of correct. Remember Megara, the girl with the red hair that he falls in love with?
Yep.
Yeah, he kills her. Really early on in the story, slaughters her horribly. But it's okay, they also had two babies, two little children. He kills them too. And so, like I said, all of this stuff, as we get into it, Greek mythology, most of what came from those things, completely wrong. We're doing the, I'd like to say real version, but what actually connects back to the actual Greek mythology bits, which are really, really entertaining, but not really, really Disneyfied. Now back to here. Let's see how they, oh, you've been patient, Sandy, what's up?
Okay, so do we have to take notes of what you're saying right now?
Not necessarily. Right now, the part, your notes are just looking at me and then blinking, you'll be fine. Well, small change. If you have things in the wrong spot up here, here's what I'll tell you to do. One of two options, either one's fine for me. Either option one, erase, rewrite it, and then write it in the correct spot, but that's a lot of work. I recommend option B, circle the word and draw an arrow to where it's supposed to go. That's less work, but can be more confusing, especially if you messed everything up and it looks like you just took an octopus and threw it down there and there's just stuff going everywhere. That might be a bit more confusing, but it's up to you. The reason I tell you that is not to help me, but when it comes time for quizzes and you need to look back at something, this could help you try to figure out where things go. So it's just to make your life easier. Be like, Mr. Brovicast, I hate myself. That's fine. And you don't have to do anything. You just sit there and pay attention. Or not. We'll see what we can do to help you. Alright, let's get into our stories. First off, chaos. At the very beginning, I'm going to have you raise your hand when we get to the part where you think it goes. So look to see where you put chaos, and we'll see how it compares to others. So if you put chaos in gods, raise your hand. Places, things, other stuff. For all of those who are giving scared looks around, chaos goes in all four. You can't get it wrong. That's why we start off with it. Chaos, now I only put it in 2 spots because I had to make my room-wise up there. But chaos and God. Chaos is a god, a place, a thing, and other stuff. Mr. Brovicast, how is that possible? Allow me to explain. In Greek mythology, before there were gods, we had Mother Earth and Father Sky. Before we had Mother Earth and Father Sky, we had this thing called chaos, which was the only thing that existed. Before stars, before planets, before peanut butter, before anything, there was just chaos. Chaos was a swirling ball of nothing that just swirled. Mr. Brovicast, you said swirling ball of nothing? Yes. Nothing can't swirl. I'm aware. But that's what they called it. If that bothers you, just wait, because we're going to kill the sky in a moment. What's up there? The sky. Yeah, I know. You just have to wrap your head around it. The Greeks are just like, don't pay attention. So swirling ball of nothing is the only thing that's up there. And it swirls for, we don't know how long, because we didn't invent watches yet, so it's just a long time. And so swirling ball of nothing. It's hard to imagine a swirling ball of nothing, so to make it easier, imagine instead pudding. So a big swirling ball of just pudding around. Chocolate pudding, because that's my favorite. For you it might be tapioca, but that's wrong. And so a swirling ball of just chocolate pudding swirling around doing puddingy things. And eventually, for those of you who paid attention in science, the amoeba, that did the little separating thing, same thing happened with the pudding. The pudding went pudding and separated to form the very first two beings, earth and sky. And so because chaos formed earth and sky, technically it's a place because it created the earth. So if you create the earth, does that make you also a place? And then earth and sky created all the first gods. And so if you create the thing that creates the gods, does that make you a god? Oh, it's like a philosophy thing. And so because that's why I put chaos and gods, it's also a place. It's also pudding, and pudding is a thing. But at the same time, it's chaos, and that's other stuff. It goes in all four of them, and that's fine with me. So wherever you want to put it, we're kind of hard to go wrong. If you used, in the iPad, the family tree, at the top of the family tree was chaos. So that's where you would find it from there. Also, I have another family tree over here, and there's a little fancy one that has chaos at the top. And so there's chaos, and you can look up there. So that chaos will explain things for you. Next up, Chronos. See where you put Chronos? Did you put it in gods?
Yeah.
Yes.
Places? Things? Other stuff? Those of you who have done your Rick Riordan books and stuff like that, technically, he is a god. No, he's not, he's a titan! It's okay, down tiger. Titans and gods are the same thing. We'll get to all of that and how confusing it is. But Chronos is a god. And so what we'll get into is the fact that there are lower G gods, not capital G God. Capital G God's like, oh, the one that's up there. These are lower G God, which just means like, oh my God, they're so big. That kind of thing, which is a whole, it's so confusing. We'll get into all that later. But Chronos was a titan. Titans were gods. They're all the same things. If you use the family tree, Chronos was on there. If you use my family tree over here, Chronos was on there. I also got my yellowish one, Chronos is on there. Over here above where Colton is, Chronos is on there. You think I was right? Chronos is all the different spots. Mr. Riley, I found a mistake. You spelled it wrong. Ha! I didn't spell it wrong. There's multiple spellings of all these different names. Why would there be multiple spellings? Because of oral tradition. It's like you're learning oral tradition. So that's why I purposely did it, and I showed you different versions of all of them. There's multiple spellings of all of these, because all they would say is the word Chronos, and how you spelled it is different than how someone else spelled it, but they're both fine. When it comes time for a quiz, I don't care how you spell it, as long as we can figure it out. I spell Chronos Z-E-U-S. No, that's Zeus. That's completely different. So it'll be close enough for me to figure out, and then we should be good to go. Going back to Colton, above where he is, he's in a good spot today. This is Chronos, the guy up here who's in his adorable purple cheerleader miniskirt. The Greeks were very open with their clothing, apparently. And so he's also, looks like he's holding a golf club. It's not a golf club. It's called a scythe. It's what you use to kill your parents, which is what the Greeks did a lot of. Their order of fun for the Greeks was killing babies, killing your parents, killing humans, watching TV. It was like went down in that list. So they did not watch a lot of TV because the other ones were so much fun. And so he's up there getting ready to kill a whole bunch of humans. We are going to get to the story of him killing his parents and him killing babies, because why would you not tell those stories? But that's not today. That's coming up a little bit later. We'll get to all those stuff. So that's Chronos. Next up, Hades. God, place, thing, other stuff. Just confused. Hades goes in two spots, so you got a 50-50 chance of getting this right. Hades is both a god and a place. So you can put him in both gods and places. Either one is fine with me. Those of you who have done your Rick Riordan books, Hades shows up in there quite a bit too. Up here, once again, Colton's in a wonderful spot. Right above him, we now have Hades, who's in the one over here. Hades in Greek mythology is not evil. Hades is antisocial. Hades doesn't want to talk to people. Hades is the shy, quiet kid sitting in the back of the room, pulling his hoodie up, painting his fingernails black, writing poetry, rocking out on his bass guitar, who just like every time he talks, he's like, "Arr!" and just growls at you. That's who Hades was in Greek mythology. He just wanted to be left alone. So the problem was, people didn't leave him alone. And gods would keep bothering him, like, hey, Hades, what's your opinion? He's like, eh. Like, Hades, what's going on? Eh. He's like, what's going on? He's like, ah! He'd eventually just snap and yell, like, Hades, you're such a jerk. And they'd get all mad at him, but he wasn't. He was just like, just leave me alone and we'll be cool, yo. Now, he also got to name the place where he lived. And Hades was not very creative. So when they came, they're like, hey, Hades, congratulations, you won the lottery. You get to name this place. Like, what do you want to call it? And he's like, Hades. Like, no, that's your name. What do you want to call the place where you live? He's like, Hades. Like, well, you're not catching on. Hades. Like, fine, we're going to call it Hades. And so they just called the place where he lived Hades. His full name, by the way, was Hades, Hades, because his H stood for Hades. Because his parents weren't very creative either. And so that's where Hades and the place comes in. Next up, underworld. Underworld, God, place, thing, other stuff. It is a place. One of the few that only goes in one. And the underworld was the same place as Hades. Hades and underworld are the exact same thing. And there was a reason for it in Greek mythology. There's a game you can play as a kid called Bloody Mary. Where you go in the bathroom, you turn out the lights, you go, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, Mary. And you turn around, like, look in the mirror, and, like, the lady comes out of the mirror and attacks you. It's a great game. The Greeks believed that sort of the same thing applied to the gods. And oftentimes, they would just appear if you said their name. The most notorious one to just show up was Hades, which is ironic because he was antisocial. But the worry was that if you said his name, he would just suddenly appear in front of you. So if all of a sudden, like, oh no, Abeo, we don't like you, I hope you go visit Hades, all of a sudden, he would show up like, did you say my name? Like, oh, no, I'm just attacking Abeo, not you. Hades would grip like, rawr, and then grab you and pull you down to the underworld. Because of that, Greeks would never say his name out loud. They would have a nickname for him. And there was a couple different ones. One was the dark god, because, duh. The other one was they called him the rich god, because he was thought to be the richest of all of them. Mainly because, well, where do you find gold and diamonds?
Underworld.
Where did he live? They weren't real creative. He was also the only god to have a grill. He had gold teeth and stuff like that on his little ride. Tomorrow we'll pick up, not tomorrow, Thursday we'll pick up more of the underworld because we still have to kill Abeo and figure out what happens when we send her down there. We're all excited.